I keep hearing people talk about communism, and I'm just a little confused. So I have a few questions. And these are legitimate questions, so feel free to answer them in the comments. Now, communism, according to Karl Marx, is taking all power, property, and, well, everything away from the individuals and giving it to the state. I think the hope is that it's redistributed fairly among everyone, but, well, we all know how that turns out. But I don't want to talk about Marxism. Instead, let's talk about anarcho-communism, basically what people call true communism, or the complete dissolution of all government, the complete eradication of all classes and social statuses. Everyone is entirely equal. Everyone works to the best of their ability and in return is given what they need to survive. Doesn't actually sound so bad. Sounds kind of utopian, actually. But I can't help but think of just a few little problems. So if the government is basically everyone, or what we will call the collective, how would anything get accomplished? Let me explain. When you have a huge group of people, let's just say the 300 million people in America, it's very hard to accomplish much of anything without some level of organization. Usually, someone is in charge, someone who basically oversees an operation and micromanages people to coordinate for the good of that operation. But under true communism, we don't want someone in charge, because then those people belong to a higher social class. Those people are a government. That's what we're trying to do away with in the first place. But someone has to be the person to micromanage other groups of people. So a class system is inevitable because it's just the nature of groups of individuals. If no one is in charge and everyone is completely equal status, then nothing gets done because everyone would just argue about what to do all day. I mean, eventually a consensus might be reached, but every time any sort of issue came up, everyone would have to stop what they're doing and either argue about it or vote. So it's pretty much required to have someone in charge. And we don't even have to talk about big government. Let's just talk about building a house. So on this team of house builders, one carpenter wants to use aluminum nails to fasten the joint hangers because they're cheaper and we have more of them. But another carpenter wants to use steel nails because they're stronger. So now everyone has to stop what they're doing and come take a vote on it. But then a consensus can't be reached and they have to try to convince each other which one to go with, and they all look up online when the issue has popped up in the past. But in some cases, people have gone with steel nails, and in some cases, people have gone with aluminum nails, so that doesn't really help. So 2 hours later, they finally decide on steel nails. And about 5 minutes pass, and one guy complains that he can't find a hammer because Steve has all the tools over in the work area, even though Steve is on a smoke break and not even using them. But then Steve comes back and is like, I'm not going to put my tools back in the toolbox every time it take a few minutes to smoke a cigarette, because then I just have to go get them again, and it's way faster if I just have them all there when I come back. So then everyone has to stop working again and come and vote on if you should put your tools back in the toolbox when you go on break. And that takes like another 2 hours. But all of this could be solved if we just had a head carpenter who was like, okay, we're just going to use steel nails today and also put your tools away when you go on break. So my point is, for things to go smoothly, you need to have people in charge. And then depending on the scale of the project, you need people in charge of those people. And you'll probably need some kind of committee or something to make sure everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. And that's pretty much just a government. And even if each person is getting paid the same amount or whatever, you still have people in charge of you telling you what to do. I mean, you're still stuck in the mud, like hammering nails into a wall while someone is sitting in an office building, just sipping coffee. And it would probably make the most sense to put the most experienced person in charge, or maybe put the people who have the best leadership skills in charge. Either way, it means the people in charge would be more highly respected and have a higher social standing than the average peon. So I guess my question is, how can a society function in an efficient manner without some kind of hierarchy? And even if you value equality over efficiency, what about emergency situations? First responders need someone to organize them and tell them what to do so they can act quickly. They don't have time to sit around and argue and vote about how to put out a fire. I mean, unless you value equality over human life. And at the very, very least, don't you need some kind of spokesperson or figurehead to talk to leaders of foreign countries? I mean, unless you plan to have 300 million face cams with everyone all talking at once as a means to communicate with outside countries. So communism has a problem in that for it to work, everyone in the system needs to want it to work. So my question is, what do you do with the people who don't want it to work? If we use America as an example, 300 million people, and let's be super generous and say that 99% of Americans completely agree that communism is what they wanted, that still leaves 3 million people that you need to dispose of in some way. And really the only options are either imprison or kill. But not because they did something bad, but just because they didn't think communism was a good idea. So is ushering in the communist utopia worth the lives of 3 million innocent people? And if you think that's a hard choice, what if only half of America wanted communism? Which, by the way, is still being very generous. you'd be wiping out 50% of the population. I mean, that's like Thanos levels of insanity. But that's just the beginning of it, really. The reason we would have to get rid of these people is because we can't have everyone mooching off the system. I mean, they have to work to aid the collective, and in return they receive food or other resources from the collective. If they don't work, and we still give them the resources that they need, presumably the same amount that you would receive if you did work, then what incentive does anyone have to work? And the system kind of falls apart. Or what about people who just aren't good at their job or don't contribute much anyway? What do we do with them? I mean, how do we decide who gets what job in the first place? Do we take aptitude tests? What if there's no opening for the thing we're good at, or if we aren't really good at anything? Like, I wanted to be a teacher, and maybe I was even good at being a teacher, but we didn't need any more teachers. We needed farmers. And then I had to be a farmer. So some people, probably a lot of people, are going to get stuck doing jobs they don't like or aren't good at. And then that's just their life. I mean, that sucks. That combined with the fact that you can't ever get ahead because no matter what, you're always going to get paid the same amount. I mean, you think you have it bad now getting paid minimum wage working at Walmart. Under communism, you'd still be working at Walmart, but now you only get paid in Walmart gift cards. The whole thing makes me think a lot of people would just kind of be inefficient and lazy and maybe purposely screw stuff up in hopes they would get assigned somewhere else. So what do we do with those people? And what would we do with just generally lazy people? I mean, to get to this point, you already would have had to imprison and kill millions of dissenters, so probably wouldn't be a problem doing a little bit more of that. So that raises the question, in this perfect communist society, would making a mistake at work or being lazy mean imprisonment and death? How else would you deal with people? Like I said earlier, if you just let them not work, but still paid them, why would anyone work? Okay, let me put it this way. Steve and I are both the same age, gender, we have the same job, same capabilities, and are nearly identical as far as the collective is concerned. As such, under communism, we should be paid the same amount. And when I talk about pay, I'm talking about resources, food, and recreation time, probably, like in Star Trek. But what if someone was getting paid more than me, and I didn't think they deserved it? So after work, I'm allotted 1 hour in the holodeck or whatever, but Steve gets 2 hours a day in the holodeck because he has stress problems, and an extra hour in the holodeck is what the collective has determined he needs. But I know Steve pretty well, and I'm pretty sure I'm just as stressed as he is, but I just complain a lot less. So why wouldn't I start complaining more or overreacting about how stressed I was just so I could get an extra hour in the holodeck a day too? What would stop everyone from doing that? What's to stop everyone from trying to be diagnosed with every disorder or handicap imaginable in order to get extra pay or special allowances, while getting away with doing the least amount of work possible? I mean, people do that already. So one thing that confuses me is how the people who are talking about communism are usually huge advocates for personal freedom. But it seems like communism is pretty much the opposite of that. We're talking about every aspect of your life being run by the collective. You want to be a teacher? Too bad, we need farmers. You want to eat bread? Too bad, you get a potato. What if the collective votes on some policy that doesn't really seem to be all that politically correct? Like, what if they said you're not allowed to be gay? Do you fight the collective, or you just accept that homophobia is going to be a thing in order for the communist utopia to function? Come to think of it, I'm pretty sure that any sort of multiculturalism would be suppressed too. If everyone is equal and everyone is the same, it seems like it would be deemed a threat to communism to celebrate your individuality or how different your culture is from everyone else's. Anyway, at the very least, religion would have to go, as it's probably the single most divisive issue in human society. So my question is, are you willing to tell all Muslims in your communist utopia that they aren't allowed to practice their religion anymore? Now, this is my last question, but probably the most simple one. Do you believe that every other person in the country, or even most people, or maybe just a good number of people outside your immediate friends and family, have your best interest in mind, or care about you at all, or even know what your best interests are? And do you trust that they're going to act on your best interests instead of their own? Hey, thanks for watching the video. This was a fun one. I want to give a special thanks to everyone who supports me on Patreon and Twitch, as those are basically the only ways that I make money anymore since YouTube sucks. I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone lately, so if you want to come by and watch me on Twitch, I stream from 9 PM to 1 AM Eastern every weekday. Anyway, I'm Cothrix, and you have a wonderful day.